Hi, it's Leslie Meredith with Breakbulk Events and Media. I'm here in Houston at Breakbulk Americas, and we are talking offshore wind this afternoon. And I have Ed from Crowley joining me, who is on this panel. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So clearly, Crowley has been on the forefront of getting the supply chain together for offshore wind, which is relatively new to the United States. Tell us about your activities and what you've been doing.
Sure. So Crowley wants to provide an end-to-end solution for offshore wind developers. So from the construction phase with feedering out to foreign flag installation vessels to operations and maintenance and training those operators and that are going to maintain the actual turbines with CTVs and service operation vessels. Leveraging our great experience in the U.S. maritime industry and with U.S. shipyards to build some Jones Act vessels to be able to work on the offshore wind industry.
Excellent. So are any of those vessels, are they yet in construction or still in the design phase?
So for feedering, we have a fleet of flat deck barges that we currently use in the offshore oil and gas industry. And we also have four, in particular, we have a lot of vessels, but we have four DP2 offshore tugs that will also be used in the offshore wind space. So we have some vessels that right now that will be used for the feedering, but we also have designs for other vessels, like the service operation vessels and other feeder solution kinds of things. Turning that 4x1 into an articulated tug barge with DP capability for feedering. So there's a lot of different designs that we have, but the existing fleet we think can certainly, for the first few projects, provide that feedering solution for developers.
Excellent. All right. We've been hearing talk of offshore wind projects in the U.S. for quite a few years. Let's put it, yeah. What tripped the wire, if you will, for Crowley to say, yes, now is the time. It's happening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about a year ago, and so I've been with Crowley now for 9 months, and about a year ago, and I came from the port world, right? So I was the port director in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and we had been focusing on offshore wind for the last decade and a half. And I think so. The Crowley actually approached us, talking about utilizing the facilities and that kind of thing. I think it was such a strong signal for Crowley to be so focused on offshore wind. That was a very strong signal, certainly to me personally. But the fact that the U.S. maritime industry is getting involved in offshore wind, to me, was a pretty good signal that offshore wind is going to happen in a big way in the U.S. And I think there's a few reasons why the timing. One is just the price, the levelized cost of energy has come down so much that offshore wind is already a very competitive fuel, for generation of power. So when you look at the numbers that when Vineyard Wind came in at 8 cents a kilowatt hour, that's cheaper than what I pay now in Massachusetts for power. So there are places where offshore wind already makes sense from an economic perspective. And that combined with the new administration that has very focused goals on emissions reductions and making sure that there is green power that's available. That's why I think a permitting clarity and an economic reason to generate electrons using using wind have created this sort of buzz around offshore wind that we've seen certainly in the last 9 to 10 months with the new administration, and we think that will persist throughout administrations as the supply chain starts to really develop. Because a lot of that supply chain will be in the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll utilize a lot of our know-how in the oil and gas industry to create a uniquely American offshore wind industry.
Interesting. Do you think that we'll eventually have offshore wind in the Gulf as well?
I do. You look at the price, how far the price has come down now. energy prices in the Gulf of Mexico are a lot cheaper than they are in New England. But that it will continue to come down and will continue to become more and more feasible for electricity to be generated, even in the Gulf of Mexico. I also think that there's an opportunity with green hydrogen. So one of the things that you can do with offshore wind is put electrolyzers on it and create green hydrogen, so zero emissions hydrogen as a fuel. And that's something that can leverage, the leadership in the Gulf of Mexico in the oil and gas industry and in the fuels industry. It's something that we can leverage here in the Gulf of Mexico with a zero emission, hydrogen. Still a few years away, but it's something that certainly there's folks in the Gulf of Mexico that are looking at that.
Absolutely. All right. So as you look ahead, what is your business outlook for Crowley and offshore wind in general as its economic impact?
We think it's very, very significant. You look at the projects, so Vineyard Wind is the first one that just got financed. That's 800 megawatts, but it's a $2.5 billion project. And you add, so if you extrapolate that out to the full 30 gigawatts, there's going to be a massive investment in capital and in construction and in operations and maintenance here, starting in the East Coast, but going to the West Coast and going to the Gulf of Mexico over the course of the next few decades. And we see companies like Crowley, U.S.-based companies that have the mariners, that have the assets, and that are willing to invest. Really, there's a huge opportunity for us. So, obviously we want to get in as early as we can, and we are. And we see this as a big part of our future at Crowley.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ed. That was so much great information.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having me.